Hi everyone, I'm Tom and welcome back to my kitchen. The weather here is starting to get a little cooler out, so that calls for turning on the oven and doing some slow cooked meals, things that we might think of as comfort foods. So today what we're going to make is a slow roasted pot roast. I've told you I'm the youngest of 7 kids. It's hard to not cook for that many people, even though I never cooked for that whole family. But here's chuck roast, 6 pounds. I know one of them would be enough, but they both look so good that I just had to get them. So they're each about 3 pounds each. I have patted them dry because as we brown them, we want to brown them. We don't want to steam them first and then hope that they get brown. So patted them dry with paper towels, a little salt, a little pepper. Got a 9-quart cast iron enamel Dutch oven heating up on the stove. This will go into the oven later, but let's take a look at just browning this, and you'll get to hear that lovely sizzle when we put it in the pot. And let's take a look. So you're thinking, how are we going to put both of these pot roasts, chuck roasts, into the Dutch oven, but they're going to shrink a little bit, and once they do brown, it's okay that they touch each other. They'll just sit in there, have a nice little afternoon nap, and they'll come out real tasty. So it's going to take about 10 minutes for each chuck roast to brown, about 5 minutes per side. It's going to create all that nice lovely bits and brown bits on the bottom that we'll scrape up later to make sure it goes into the pan in the end. So we're going to give that about 5 minutes per side, and then we'll check in on it, and then we're going to add the other ingredients. Okay, it's been almost 20 minutes of browning the meat, and one of the things I realized is one of our neighbors, she's 86 years old, and we always laugh because if we stop by her house, she's always wearing what we would call a house coat, or my neighbor Christy calls it a duster. And I realized that when you're cooking something like this, and if you're going to serve it for dinner that same day, you don't want to be wearing your clothes that you're going to be eating dinner with friends or neighbors with, because your clothes are really going to pick up this smell. So that's why I'm wearing an apron today. But anyway, this is coming along nicely. Let's take a quick look, and nice brown crust on there. Just going up down there. Here's the one. I've already done the one. So at this point, I think it's close enough to being done. So, get my top holder. And lift that out. Just putting it here on a baking sheet. Now I do have some, I started out with a little vegetable oil. When I brown the meat, it's rendered off some of its own fat. And just simply now to give the juices that this is all going to create as it's braising in the oven, I have 2 very large onions, 2 ribs of celery, 2 carrot stalks, but these are chopped very roughly because we're not going to eat them. We're just going to use them to flavor the sauce. So this is going to go into this hot pot, and we really just want to get that to start browning. That'll take about 8 minutes, just loosening up some of the bits on there. And then after that's done, we're going to add in 4 large cloves of minced garlic, some fresh thyme from my yard. We'll add some red wine to that, some beef broth, and then it's going to go in the oven. So let's set this timer for 8 minutes. I'm going to check on that occasionally to stir to make sure it's not sticking, but pretty sure it won't. But we want it evenly brown, not just one side. So see you in 8 minutes. Okay, it's been almost 8 minutes. Got about 30 seconds to go. But let's take a look at the vegetables. So you can see they're getting nice and brown. And in the center, These are our little flavor crystals, I'll call them. The technical term is fond. And I'm going to turn the vent off. You can hear a little better. So that fond has lots of flavor. So I'm going to take a little bit of beef broth. Use that now to deglaze the pan. And all of that delicious flavor is now off the bottom of the pan and in the liquid. So I have 4 cups of beef stock. Just want to put some of that in there now. Move those vegetables around. And now we're going to place the beef back into the pot. So this piece has a little bit of a curve to this side. So I'm going to put that against the wall of the Dutch oven. The other piece, I was looking at it and I like doing jigsaw puzzles, and I knew those were not all going to fit in there in one layer. So I did cut through the connective tissue. So I have the other piece with its curved side, nestle that alongside, and then I have these 2 little smaller bits. And you can see by making that cut, it all fits in there quite well. So to that, got my beef broth, because this is going to flavor the gravy we're going to have later. And 3 cups of red wine. To that, I'm adding a whole bunch of thyme from the yard. And gonna put a little bit of garlic in there, those 4 cloves. You know, it's funny when you're cooking, sometimes you make mistakes, like that should have gone in the last 45 seconds with the onions and carrots and celery. But I was really thinking ahead about the delicious wine going into this, forgot it. So it's going to go in now. It's going to be a big flavor difference? I don't think so. That's there. I still have a cup of beef broth. Going to put that in there. Going to put the lid on, but before we do that, we really want a nice tight seal on this. So I'm just taking a piece of heavy duty aluminum foil. Put that in there, put the top on, now that's going to go into a very low oven, only 300 degrees, but this is going to cook for 4.5 hours. It's going to be so tender. Don't cook at anything under that. The last hour or so, if you want, you could add potatoes to that, but because we're making gravy, I always like having mashed potatoes. So we're going to pop this in the oven. And that now is good for 4 hours. So just at about 5 p.m., we're going to have that delicious roast with mashed potatoes. See you in 4 hours. 3 hours, 45 minutes. Okay, it's been 4 hours, and it's time to make the gravy. So let's take it out of the oven. It'll be steamy. And let's take a closer look. Nice and bubbly in there. It looks great. So I'm going to just gently remove the meat and put it on a platter. And you're going to see it. You can't just remove it easily. It all comes off in these very tender chunks. And it's okay if you bring some of those root vegetables with it. We're probably not going to eat them anyway, but they are there. So got this. What I want to do is get a spatula, a strainer, and take those vegetables out of there. Because they've been in there for, the same 4 hours. They're probably a little mushy. They've given up all of their flavor to this lovely beef broth, red wine mixture. And that is all out of there. Let's turn the heat up. And that should come up to a pretty big simmer pretty quickly. And in my mason jar here, I've made a slurry of milk and flour. So once this gets bubbling here, we're going to start slowly adding this in, whisking it in so it makes the thick gravy. We're going to take this foil, cover our meat, so it stays nice and warm until company arrives. I put it on this cookie sheet just because it's a little easier to handle. And I put it right over the oven. And we can see that's coming up to the boil pretty quickly there. Let's take a look. Shake that up. Whisk. And this slurry mixture is going to help this to thicken. And don't worry if you get any little flour lumps in there in case your flour didn't dissolve exactly in your jar, because with the strainer we'll be able to get that out of there. Add a little more. Let's say I've maybe added a 1/4 cup so far. And of course, this all depends on how thick you like your gravy. Some of it you want very light, just to coat the meat. Some, like myself, like it thicker, because we're gonna, get our mashed potatoes on the plate. We're gonna make a little hole in the center to make our volcano of butter and gravy together. And again, this is just taking minutes to get it to this point. I would say, we started out with 3 cups of wine, 4 cups of beef broth, so 7 cups. We might need another 1/4 cup of that. Yeah, it's coming together nicely. So, I think that was just the right amount. This is looking great. We're going to put this into a turkey boat. I only have one. It has a lovely little Thanksgiving theme on that. That's coming up, so that's okay. Otherwise, just put it in a bowl, add a soup spoon, and this gravy is done. So again, I have a few little lumps in there, so I can put this either through a sieve or just use my hand strainer, my Chinese spider, to get that out. But you can see that's nice and thick right now. That's going to be perfect on those mashed potatoes. So there we go. We have our nice comfort food pot roast. I've made mashed potatoes. And in the oven I have some butternut squash that's been slow roasting with the beef. I'm going to turn the oven up a bit so that it browns nicely, because I've coated it with a little olive oil and some sage from the garden. Anyway, hope you make a nice comfort meal for your family this week. Talk to you soon. Bye.